Outgoing Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, a political newcomer elected back in 2010. The former Tampa prosecutor became the state's top law enforcement official on her first run for office. Now, another Tampa attorney and former judge wants to follow a similar path. Ashley Moody spent 10 years as a criminal court judge in Hillsborough County following her 2006 election win. Now she wants to join an elite club with Bondi, becoming Florida's second female attorney general. And Ashley Moody joining us this morning for our Sunday Spotlight. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Appreciate that. You know what? You are a relatively new political newcomer.
Absolutely.
To the scene. You know, elected as a judge, as we just said, back in 2006. You resigned your position rather abruptly for Attorney General, but why now? Did someone approach you to do this, or have you come to do this on your own?
Well, you know, over the course of my 10 years as a judge and certainly as a federal prosecutor, and prior to that with one of the global law firms, Holland & Knight, I was always taking on projects that could better our justice system or improve access to courts or due process. And I think over the years, people identified that personality trait. And
they pointed it out to you and said, hey, you know, you would be really good at doing this? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. As I was on the bench over a decade, and so I started numerous programs to improve our justice system, and some of those carry on in nonprofits now. And I think over the years, people watched that and said, you know, a judge is very reactive. You can only deal with the specific facts and circumstances in front of you, and you should do something that's more proactive and have a greater effect on the state. And
speaking of being on the bench, I want to talk to you about something that's changed recently, the change to Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The burden of proof has now shifted to prosecutors, as you know. They have to prove the defendants were not justified in using deadly force to defend themselves. And now you handled a very controversial Stand Your Ground case here in Tampa.
I handled numerous Stand Your Ground cases as a judge, certainly.
Yeah, numerous ones. So the question is, if you're newly elected as Attorney General, what would you do about this?
Well, look, this is a common misperception that people have of Attorney General. Attorney General's role is to represent the state of Florida and the voters, defending the laws and certainly protecting consumers. But in terms of those decisions, where the burden's going to lie, the procedural process for raising Stand Your Ground issues, those are going to rest with the legislature, certainly, and then the courts are going to decide this. And as you probably already know, there's been some discussions on this shift, and it's going to play out in the courts, and there's a process for that.
Okay, let's talk about another major change, and that is Florida's death penalty law. Jurors must now unanimously vote to sentence someone to death after a trial. Do you support this new law based on all of your experience on the bench?
Well, certainly, as a judge, I handled all kinds of cases, from death penalty cases to theft cases, and this is something I think a lot of legal experts thought was coming for a long time, to shift to a unanimous jury decision as to death, and the courts have decided that, and you know, we'll follow suit. And,
so you're for it?
I'll represent the interests of the legislature and the people and what they decide. Okay,
well, let's stay on that topic for a moment. Orlando State Attorney Aramis Ayala, she's made lots of headlines, as I know you know, recently. She was removed from her pending death penalty case of accused cop killer Markeith Lloyd by the governor, Rick Scott, and then and then he removed her from her remaining death penalty cases. And one step further, you know, she said she wouldn't, you know, she said after she wouldn't take the Markeith Lloyd case to the death penalty, she said she wouldn't take any other cases to the death penalty. If the governor asked you what you thought about this, what would you tell him?
Well, certainly anybody that puts themselves out there to serve in a role and takes an oath to do a specific job needs to follow through and do that job. As an Attorney General, when I take an oath to defend the laws of the state of Florida and protect consumers, I will do that job. If it provides me discretion, I will apply discretion and do that job. And I think that's where the criticism came in, that she wasn't using the discretion that was given her on a case-by-case basis. She was just making a blanket policy, and that's not what her job was to be.
So that's what I was saying, broad blanket policy, and, you know, just take
as opposed to doing her job on a case-by-case basis and making that decision as she swore to do when she took that job.
And we shall see how that turns out with that situation. You know what? As you know, there's a huge crisis we here in Florida are facing right now, and not only here, but in the entire nation as well, and that's the opioid crisis. You know, Attorney General Bondi spent her first years as AG with the working to close down the pill mills and wiping out prescription drug fraud. So now many users have turned to that deadly combination of fentanyl and heroin, just to name a few. So what would be your focus here? Prosecution or rehabilitation?
All right. Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because as a federal drug prosecutor previously, I certainly have no tolerance for people that are selling drugs, distributing drugs to the most vulnerable in our society. But that said, we need to take a smart approach. What we have tried to do in the past clearly is not working. We're at epidemic levels here. People are dying two a day in South Florida. So I plan to continue Bondi's fight. And while that has shifted drugs, we have to attack it like she has done a great job in her tenure.
You have a huge mission ahead of you if you are elected.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time this morning.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thanks.
All right.